I know words. I have the best words.
This is All the Best Words with Matt Murphy and Cameron Smith.
And he's like, well, let me show you. And like he pulls some things up on his screen and it's all, oh, this is the titanium and it goes down into the thing and here's the ball and here's the plastic cup. I was like, yeah, where's it from?
Where was it sourced?
And he's like, no, but it fits in like this and it's very modern technology and it's incredible. These plastic pieces are brand new. They're going to last forever. Yeah. Where's it from? So anyway, physical therapy, let's talk about that. And I'm like, are you not going to tell me where it's from? And he paused and said, I don't know.
Well, true story.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother is buried in an urn we bought off Amazon.
We were going to, my grandmother had a fancy urn because my grandfather, she was going to give her body to science. My mother donated her body to science because she died at the age of, 52 after a long extended, she had brain cancer when she was 28. So I think the scientific community was very interested in, checking out what the long-term effects of brain surgery from 1978 were in 2003, 25 years later.
That makes sense.
Right? So my grandparents were inspired by this, that my mother wanted to do that, and she did that, and it was very well received, and the Medical College of Georgia was very, appreciative of having the ability to study my mom's brain. Well, 3 years later, my grandmother dies. They both decided to donate their bodies to science. Well, apparently a 52-year-old woman who had brain surgery 25 years before is a lot more interesting of a study than a 79-year-old woman who just died.
Right.
And so they declined my grandmother's body, and it pissed my grandfather off. He was so mad.
I don't know. That gives me an idea, though, that I may donate my body to charity. Imagine that you're a charity, and then somebody's saying, well, where should we put it? What? The body.
Well, you got to, First, you've got to pay for the stuffing.
Right.
And then, all right, so hello and welcome back to a newly revamped version of All the Best Words. My name is Matt Murphy, and I say all the best words.
My name's Cameron Smith. I write all the best words.
And we appreciate you being here. You guys know what to do. Give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Here's the drill. Cameron brings a word. I bring a word. We talk about those words, and we'll get you out of here in about 15 minutes, which is nice. Before we get into the words, though,
okay,
I bet Alaska sucked.
Yeah, it was big.
Tell everybody where you went.
So for 2 weeks, my family, my 5 boys, some extended family, went, we started in Vancouver, went all the way up the Pacific coast, the Alaskan coastline right there, and then into the interior to Denali and Fairbanks. Nice. So all the 5 people that live in Alaska, we saw all of them.
Yeah.
It was super cool. I can tell you a moose is a huge animal. Just absolutely.
Bigger than you think.
I was unprepared. I knew a moose was a large animal.
Right.
We had done whitewater rafting, and we were in a bus heading back to the base camp, and my son goes, Dad, that's a moose. And I look over, and this thing is a bull moose that at the shoulder had to be like 7 feet, and it's just like your brain doesn't process a critter that big. And you're just like, wow.
Like the first time I saw Cam Newton on a football field.
That's fair.
Like that looks like a normal quarterback, but only like 30% bigger than a human being should be.
And the way that glaciers work, kind of weird. It's this big old thing of ice that just grinds across the mountains. What it creates, it's a weird word to say, is these fjords where they're carved out and they're like 1,800 feet deep of water. So you have mountain that goes straight into water. Mm-hmm. And in places like California, you have mountains and you have water. But the mountain straight into the water is just breathtaking and super cool. So it was a great family trip. I needed a break. I needed you to get your arm reattached, and now we're back.
Yeah, you took a nice 2-week vacation, and I slept on Oxycontin for 2 weeks after having my shoulder replaced, which we will talk about in just a moment. Let's get into it. Cameron, fresh off your vacay, I feel like you should go first. What's your word?
Well, since this is a podcast, I think I'm allowed to say my word. My word is bullshit. I hope my
I've
mom.
been waiting on this moment.
I hope my mom's not listening. I understand that that we don't want to use profanity, but the president of the United States did, and
I feel like that gives us
I've been given license by President Donald
it's a pretty
Trump.
good defense with the FCC.
Yes,
right?
yes, he did it. Well, he was using the word in reference to his conversation with Vladimir Putin and saying that he always says nice things and he's always polite, but that Trump really just said, I get nowhere. And what was very interesting for me is Trump's tact had been very much to give Putin every opportunity to play ball, to say, hey, Ukraine's not the only player here. We want to consider Russia's interest too. Like, we understand the NATO, had been very diplomatic in his approach. And that had made the left angry because they're like, totally give Ukraine whatever they want, whenever they want it. And even some on the right who are sympathetic to Ukraine were sort of like, wait a minute, you're playing patsy with an authoritarian thug. Well, it's very interesting to see Trump say, okay, I think I've kind of had enough here. Reversing Hegseth's pause on arms to Ukraine, saying, no, we're going to arm them, and saying publicly, hey, this guy doesn't do anything. He just fluffs me and then says, I'm going to do what I want. And Russia launched their largest drone attack to date after Trump said that.
I love it. I love the word, and I love what Trump has done with this conflict, right? Because he came into office and everybody on every side of the thing freaked out because he refused to assign bad guy hats and good guy hats.
Right.
He said, look, I just want peace. I want the killing to stop, and I'm going to do what is necessary to stop the killing. And so he kind of dresses down Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House, infamously, and he says, of course I'm talking to Putin, and I'm having very nice conversations. And I think he felt like, extending that olive branch and, saying, hey, I'm a friendly here. I just want peace here. I think he thought that would go somewhere with Vladimir Putin. And it was a noble, I think it was an earnest and noble attempt. But at some point, if this guy, like you call it, is just going to fluff him, good for Trump to say, look, I'm tired of the bullshit. And if he's going to continue to go this route, you know what we can do? We can arm the Ukrainians again. You know what we can do? If necessary, we can give the Ukrainians some money again. So we can make whatever you're trying to do a hell of a lot harder if you're not being serious about getting to a peace.
And Trump said he could get peace on day one. And I think at the time he believed it.
I do too.
I think he said, look, I'm going to go in here and say, this is where the line is going to be. We're basically going to set it where the status quo was. Russia, you back off. Ukraine, you got to surrender this territory. And this is where we are. And y'all can't join NATO. I think he thought there was just this deal. Putin would say, okay, fine, but they can't join NATO. And that would be it, right? What's been at least obvious to me is Putin is not a good faith actor. He's an aging authoritarian who wants to reclaim all of Ukraine. He does not want to have the peace he had. He wants the whole thing.
He's really trying to get the band back together.
Exactly.
The old Soviet Union.
That is his goal. He truly believes, and he said as much, that the worst day in the world was when the Soviet Union fell. And I think this is where it's a little wrinkle on the word bullshit, but it's also kind of a joke that you have Trump, who the left wants to say is an aging authoritarian, and then you have Putin, who's an actual aging authoritarian, and you can see the difference in behavior and tactics. You actually can. And so that word could also apply to the media's treatment of this exchange.
I also wonder if Vladimir Putin did not buy into the garbage narrative being presented by the political left in America, because they wanted to suggest that Trump was chummy, Trump was his best buddy, Trump loves Putin. And, I think, I don't know, who knows, but is it possible that Vladimir Putin believed, well, if this guy loves me that much, like all these media outlets are saying, I can pull one over on him and I can string him along as long as I want to try to get what I want to get. And good for Trump for calling him out on it and saying, you know what, my goal is peace. And I've tried for months to try to talk you into it. And apparently it's not working, so we're going to go a different way.
Yeah, and I think it's carrot and stick. Now we have to see what the stick looks like because sanctions haven't done anything, that sort of thing. And it's going to be interesting to see how many of the chips Trump pushes Ukraine's way because of Putin's behavior. I think this is a good moment for Trump to basically say, okay, I went this way. Now we're going the other way. If he doesn't do that, it actually makes Putin look strong.
Well, I agree, and he is coming off, his best foreign policy victory in either his first or this term with the Iranian strikes, just the pinpoint strikes. So who knows what he can do with this? All right, my word today is a little self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
It's osteophytes.
Mm.
I don't know if you know this, Cameron. You were gallivanting in the great, what is it called? The Great North? You were gallivanting in the Great North, the
land of the midnight sun,
the final frontier on Earth.
That's
very jealous. That's
Star Trek.
Well, it's my final, but I'm very jealous because I want to go to Alaska, and so I'm jealous that you've been there. But while you were doing that, I was getting my arm chopped off and reattached. And I was told that I don't know if you have heard, am king of the osteophytes. That's right.
Sounds good.
You may refer to me as Matt.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Thank you.
I don't require any.
Lord Matt or just Matt?
Or, your Royal Osteophyte Highness.
Your Excellency.
Yeah, sure. Whatever you feel comfortable with the knowledge that I am king of the osteophytes. So osteophytes are bone spurs. I did not know that osteophytes were bone spurs. My doctor, as I came out of anesthesia, and obviously I was out of it. I barely remember any of this. But Dr. Hageman and Dr. Marinu, two surgeons, were doing the work, and both of them said, he's like, man, you had more osteophytes than I've ever seen on a shoulder replacement. And I was like, wow, thank you very much. And he goes, you're welcome. And I remember saying, hey, can I ask a question? And he said, what? And I said, what's an osteophyte? And he said, it's a bone spur. And I was like, why the hell didn't you say that? So, but these are bone spurs that pop up. They think they're doing good. And because bone, when you get arthritis and bone rubs against bone, a bone's response to that happening, to what it considers to be trauma, is to grow more bone.
Right.
It thinks it's going to help by growing additional bone, and that's where bone spurs come from, and that's what gives us all the trouble. And it reminds me of government, right?
Glorious.
Where the federal government's response to an issue that is causing pain to the American people is to grow more government. And what we have seen over the last 6 months is a very meager effort to debreed those osteophytes or those barnacles and to remove them where they are doing no good. They are doing only pain. And the response on the part of the Democrats, and we can talk about how the conservatives didn't go far enough. And look, I've given that. We must demand more in the next year and a half.
Sure.
And I think you and I are in the same place on that from a physical policy perspective. But I understand why they did what they did. But the Democratic reaction to suggest that stopping able-bodied men 35 years of age from receiving Medicaid will somehow kill millions of people around the United States of America is the best example that I've seen in my lifetime of something that I've been saying for 20 years, and that is that government doesn't even naturally stay the same. Its natural state of being is to grow, like those osteophytes. And it reminded me of the effort that it truly does take to clean out that system and make it better for everybody.
Yeah, and I think this is the problem is, and I've written this about Elon Musk or about Trump's efforts to do what he's done to date. You have to come after this with a chainsaw. There is no scalpel approach here. There's no marginal retreat, because even a marginal retreat, and I don't want to call it the deep state, but the pro-government crowd is going to say, you know how many people will die? That's always where we go. It's immediately to how many people will die as a result of not spending the money. And
you know what I think every time they say that?
What?
Everybody's going to die.
Right.
There is nothing that you can do.
And I think Senator Joni Ernst said that and was like, oh, How dare she say that? That's a bad look for Republicans. And at some point, you got to say, guys, what you're saying is that any spending reduction equals death. So if we have spending reduction, we necessarily have death. Therefore, we can reduce no spending.
So if we spend enough, we've got eternal life.
That's what they're trying to build.
That's kind of the logic.
Right, is we're trying to build eternal life for everybody. And you know what? This is the socialist dystopia. It is, hey, if we grow it enough, you know what Medicaid particularly, this is a Clinton idea, these work requirements. This is a Bill Clinton idea. The 90s Democrats, today's Republican. What is happening is the current Democrats, they realize that any retreat on the Medicaid rolls is a step away from universal health care because their rationale is very clear. If we have enough people that are on government-run health care, then they will protect it and it will perpetuate and we'll get to single payer. And
it was the design, as you know, as you and I have talked about for over a decade.
Yes.
It was the design of Obamacare was not to succeed. It was to get people dependent enough that once it failed, the only answer was single payer.
It is a Trojan horse. And you and I have talked about the need for reforms in private sector healthcare, the competition in the medical space. We're not saying that drug companies and hospitals and everything are great. But the idea that the government's going to do it better is ridiculous.
Bogus.
And,
absolutely.
And so that's where we are ultimately going to end up. But I love the idea that you're the king of the osteophytes.
King of the osteophytes.
And you connected it with bad government.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Well done.
Well, that's the way we do it. He writes all the best words.
He says them.
And this has been All the Best Words. Thanks for listening.